Chapter 1. The Miller family had two adopted young men, both candidates for future son-in-law. One was me, the other was Julian Carter. The year Chloe Miller turned 23, Julian died in a car accident, and I became the Miller family's son-in-law instead. After marriage, my wife and I have always gotten along harmoniously, deeply in love with each other. For her and the Miller family, I gave my all. I thought my life would continue happily ever after like this. Yet unexpectedly in my twilight years, my wife suddenly proposed moving Julian Carter's ashes into the Miller family cemetery plot, taking the place originally reserved for me. I was furious. I wept, made scenes, even cursed. Yet my wife remained obstinate. To make me abandon hope, she admitted she had already prepared her will. After her death, I would be stripped of everything, left with nothing when driven out of the house. When I discovered that Liam Miller, the son I had lovingly raised for decades, was actually Julian Carter's biological child, my rage was so intense that I vomited blood on the spot and died a miserable death before my wife's eyes. Opening my eyes again, I found myself back on the day the Miller family was choosing a son-in-law. Mr. Miller stood solemnly in the center of the living room with a dignified expression. "Chloe, you're old enough, it's time to make your decision. Tell us, who will you choose as your husband?" Mrs. Miller smiled kindly. "I suspect our daughter will pick Noah. She's adored him since childhood. Neither in looks nor intellect can Julian Carter compare to me." The entire Miller family knew that I had long been the chosen son-in-law candidate. But in this life, Chloe Miller gave me an icy look. Chapter 2. In her eyes, lurked deep-seated loathing and hatred. Suddenly I realized, she had been reborn too. "Since you're so infatuated with Julian Carter, I'll step aside and let you be together." 1. I voluntarily stood up and said, "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller." Noah recognizes his own mediocrity in both capability and appearance, and feels unworthy of Chloe. "So, I'm withdrawing." Chloe Miller visibly stiffened for a moment. A flicker of astonishment flashed through her eyes before they turned icy again. Without a word, she turned and hurriedly left the hall. I knew exactly what she was going to do. At this point in time, Julian hadn't had his car accident yet. There was still time to stop everything. I stood frozen in place, a bitter smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Decades of marital devotion in my past life turned out to be nothing but an illusion. "Noah, what did you just say?" Mr. Miller's voice came from the head seat in the living room. I raised my head to meet his gaze. The elder who had once treated me as his own now wore unmistakable bewilderment across his face. Drawing a deep breath, I spoke with a calmness that felt foreign even to myself. "Mr. Miller, since Chloe's heart belongs to another, I withdraw from the courtship." Mr. and Mrs. Miller looked at each other, but thinking of their daughter's resolute departure moments earlier, they couldn't find any words of comfort. I quietly returned to my room to pack my belongings, preparing to leave. The next day, social media was flooded with official announcements about Chloe Miller and Julian Carter's relationship. In the photos, Chloe nestled in Julian's arms, her smile as radiant as early spring sunshine. Julian held her by the waist, his eyes brimming with tenderness and affection. I expressionlessly swiped away these notifications. At noon, a clamor arose downstairs. I stood by the window, watching as Chloe intimately clung to Julian Carter's arm, swaggering through the entrance of the Miller residence. Before long, the sound of a heated argument came from the direction of the study. Chloe's voice was shrill. "Dad, you promised whoever marries me gets to run Miller Group. Why should Noah still be handling the Southern District Development Project now?" Chapter 3. Mr. Miller explained patiently, "Chloe, Noah has always been in charge of the Southern District Project. A sudden change would affect the company's stock price." "I don't care," Chloe cut in. "I've made up my mind. Julian is the Miller family's son-in-law. Would you rather trust an outsider than your own daughter's choice?" The South City renovation project has been a key focus for Miller Group in recent years. In my past life, under my leadership, we successfully secured it, propelling Miller Group to new heights and establishing it as the leading enterprise in Crestwood City. It also firmly cemented my position as the head of the Miller Group. Chloe Miller was well aware of this. A few minutes later, the butler led me to the study. Mr. Miller sat behind his broad mahogany desk, his face weary. He motioned for me to sit down, his fingers unconsciously tapping the desk with a dull sound. "Noah, there's something I need to discuss with you." "No need to say it, sir," I interrupted him, my voice so calm it even felt unfamiliar to me. "I understand." Mr. Miller looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his eyes before it melted into deep guilt. For so many years, he had high hopes for me and always treated me as his successor. But in today's situation, even Mr. Miller could do nothing. Having long passed retirement age, this family must have someone to take over. He sighed deeply. "You've been in charge of the South City project all along. It would really be inappropriate to suddenly change hands." Chapter 4. "But you know, Chloe is even more stubborn than I am." I nodded gently. "Sir, I understand perfectly," then drew out the prepared document folder from my jacket along with the signet ring that symbolized actual authority over the Miller Group, placing them quietly on the table. The folder contains all project documentation and transfer agreements. Chloe knows all the access codes. Mr. Miller stared at the ring, his fingers trembling slightly. This ring had adorned my finger since I turned 18, becoming practically part of my flesh. In my previous life, it never left me until the moment I died. Looking at my calm face, Mr. Miller hesitated to speak. I stood up and bowed to him. Sir, I am deeply grateful for your care all these years. Noah can never thank you enough. The study door suddenly swung open as Chloe walked in wearing high heels, followed closely by Julian Carter. She wore a red dress today that made her skin look as white as snow, breathtakingly beautiful. But those eyes that once gazed at me with affection now held nothing but cold aversion. Dad, is everything settled? Without even a glance in my direction, she walked straight to Mr. Miller's side. Mr. Miller nodded helplessly and pushed the documents and ring toward her. Noah has agreed to the handover. Before Chloe could speak, Julian Carter beside her couldn't wait to grab the ring, his eyes brimming with unconcealable excitement and pride. This scene made Mr. Miller frown slightly. Chapter 5, Wait, I suddenly spoke up. Chloe furrowed her brows and said, Noah, are you trying to go back on your word? I shook my head and pulled out a separate document from the file folder. This is the core confidential information of the South City project, including unofficial agreements with government departments and special terms with several key suppliers. Chloe suspiciously took the folder and quickly flipped through it, her frown deepening with each page. If these terms aren't handled properly, the entire project could lose at least $50 million, I said calmly. With Julian's capabilities, it shouldn't be a problem, right? A flicker of unease crossed Julian Carter's face, but it was swiftly replaced by his usual air of unwavering confidence. He chuckled, You're overthinking it. I know my limits. I said no more. Julian Carter was just a greenhorn fresh out of community college, utterly clueless about business operations. The success of the South City project relied entirely on my meticulous planning and maneuvering among various factions. Not a single ounce less of effort would have sufficed. You may leave now, Chloe said coldly. As of today, Miller Group has no further ties with you. I was about to turn and leave when Julian Carter suddenly called out, Wait. His voice carried deliberate arrogance. I stopped in my tracks without turning around. Now that Noah has been eliminated, he's no longer considered a member of the Miller family, right? By the rules, he shouldn't remain with the Millers. He should leave with nothing but the clothes on his back. Chloe, what do you think? Chapter 6, 3, The air in the study instantly froze. I slowly turned, my gaze passing over Julian Carter's triumphant face to land directly on Chloe Miller. Was this your idea? She stood there, her expression shifting endlessly. Her eyelashes fluttered briefly before her eyes began to dart away. He finally averted his gaze. Those few seconds of silence spoke louder than any words could. Mr. Miller suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Nonsense! Noah has been with the Miller family for 20 years. Even if he doesn't become our son-in-law, he's practically family. Dad, Chloe finally spoke up. Julian is right. Since we've already made our decision, we should cut all ties cleanly. I looked at her and suddenly smiled. That calm smile visibly startled Chloe. Sir, since this is Chloe's decision, I respect it. I looked around at everyone in the study, my gaze finally settling on Chloe. She instinctively turned her face away, her fingers nervously twisting her skirt. Sir, since matters have come to this point, there are some accounts that ought to be settled. My voice was soft, yet it instantly silenced the entire study. I took over the family business at 18 years old, exactly a decade ago now. Julian Carter let out a derisive snort, but was silenced by Chloe's sharp glance. The North Mountain New District project had a total investment of $120 million, with a net profit of $45 million. The Lincoln County redevelopment project, with a total investment of $70 million and a net profit of $25 million. Chapter 7, The Crestwood Port Project, with a total investment of. I listed them one by one. With every figure I announced, Mr. Miller's expression grew more solemn. Combined, all these ventures have generated over $300 million in net profit for the Miller family in the past 10 years. Chloe bit her lip lightly. Of course, she understood what these numbers signified. In her past life, the Miller family had risen to become one of Crestwood City's elite wealthy families entirely because of the foundation laid by these projects. The Millers raised me for 20 years, and in return, I earned them $300 million, I said, my tone remaining utterly calm. This ledger is settled today. The Millers owe me nothing, nor do I owe the Millers anything. I left with nothing, cutting all ties from now on. Julian Carter suddenly sneered. Sounds noble, but have you ever seen someone leave with nothing like this? He stepped forward, roughly grabbing my suit. This custom-made suit must be worth over $10,000, right? He yanked up my sleeve, exposing the Patek Philippe watch. TSK, this watch costs at least $100,000, he said, then pulled out my car keys from his pocket. And this limited edition supercar? Over $1 million. None of this would exist without the Miller family's money. I endured his manhandling and humiliation, my gaze never leaving Chloe. Her nails had already dug into her palms, yet she remained silent. Chloe, I asked softly, has all these years of our relationship truly meant nothing? Chapter 8. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as her lips parted. In the end, nothing came out. She had thought that in this second chance at life, she had already let go. I never expected that. Even now, my heart still feels as if a chunk has been carved out of it. The pain is so unbearable it nearly suffocates me. Barely holding back my emotions, I began unbuckling the watch strap. The metallic clasp snapped with a crisp click, unbearably piercing in the deathly quiet study. Noah! Mr. Miller suddenly stood up. You don't have to do this. Sir, I cut him off and continued removing my watch. Rules are rules. Suit, tie, watch, leather shoes. One by one, I took them off and neatly folded them on the floor. Finally, even the socks came off, and I stood barefoot on the icy marble floor. Julian Carter's face was brimming with triumphant glee, while Chloe's complexion had turned slightly pale. As I began unbuttoning my shirt, she finally couldn't help but turn her face away. Enough! Mr. Miller could no longer contain himself. Noah, stop this. I calmly folded the shirt and placed it atop the suit jacket. From now on, I am who I am. My name is Noah Evans, no longer the Miller family's prospective son-in-law. Chapter 9-4. As I stepped out of the Miller's back door, all I had was a rust-stained folding bicycle. It was a birthday gift from Chloe when I turned 8. The only thing that ever truly belonged to me, for all these years, it had been stored in the backyard shed. Reporters had gathered outside without my noticing, and the moment I emerged, they swarmed forward like bees. Mr. Evans, how does it feel to be kicked out of the Miller household? I heard you weren't even allowed to take your underwear with you, is that true? The blinding camera flashes forced me to squint. Excuse me, I said calmly, my voice hoarse and unrecognizable. A burst of laughter erupted from the crowd, with the lead female journalist deliberately pointing her camera at my lower body. Her face looked familiar, probably someone I'd seen at one of Julian Carter's birthday parties. I swung my leg over the bike saddle and wobbled my way through the crowd. The reporters chased after me like sharks smelling blood, only losing them after I turned into a quiet alleyway. Just as I rode out of the alley, a black Maybach suddenly blocked my path. The car window rolled down, revealing an exquisite face. Mr. Evans, I'm Sophia Sterling from Sterling Group. My grandfather would like to meet you. Would that be possible? I froze. Sophia Sterling, the renowned socialite of New York's high society. The Sterling family, a truly prestigious top-tier aristocratic dynasty. In my previous life, it took me 10 years just to barely establish connections with this behemoth, yet now they're actually seeking me out? Chapter 10. I straightened my posture and gave a solemn nod. The honor is mine. The next day, inside the Miller family villa, Chloe sat staring blankly at her phone screen. Trending #1 on Twitter, Noah Evans, the Miller family's prospective son-in-law, loses inheritance rights and gets kicked out, riding naked, morally bankrupt. What a disgrace. I heard if it weren't for the eldest Miller daughter's mercy after all these years together, he wouldn't even have kept his underwear. Just yesterday he was the lofty Mr. Evans, today he's worse off than a homeless man. How pathetic. What's so surprising? That's how all rich families' lapdogs end up. She instinctively clicked on the video, and her heart skipped a beat at the sight of the nude figure riding a bicycle in the frame. When the camera panned over the rusted bicycle, her fingers suddenly froze. Chloe, what are you watching? Julian Carter wrapped his arms around her from behind and burst into laughter when his gaze fell on her phone. Ah, this is golden. Totally worth having dozens of media outlets waiting for him. Chloe was taken aback. So the reporter was arranged by you? Of course, Julian smugly kissed her. Now all of Crestwood City knows what kind of guy Noah Evans really is. No one should dare comment on your choices anymore. Chloe managed a faint smile, but an inexplicable restlessness lingered in her heart. The image of that rickety old bicycle kept resurfacing in my mind. A few seconds later, she suddenly asked, Julian, have you learned to ride a bicycle yet? Chapter 11. Julian scoffed. Why would I ride a rickety bicycle that's prone to falling when I can drive a four-wheeled car? I'm not an idiot like Noah, he continued. Don't you remember I've always been terrified of pain since childhood? Hearing his reply, Chloe's heart skipped a beat with a sudden dread. She reopened the video, meticulously examining Noah's body. Julian, noticing her intense focus, couldn't hide his jealousy and remarked sourly, brazenly riding a bicycle naked in front of so many people, shameless. Luckily he was thrown out, or it would have been the Miller family's reputation tarnished. Chloe turned a deaf ear because she didn't find what she was looking for. After hesitating for a moment, she abruptly left Julian behind and rushed upstairs to Noah's empty bedroom. She found the storage box and rummaged through childhood photos that belonged to all three of them. But in the thick photo album, there was only one picture of Noah. That was taken over a decade ago when they were swimming by the seaside in Crestwood. In the photo, she's holding Julian's hand on the beach, laughing particularly joyfully. Only Noah stands silently in the distance, still holding her swim ring in his hand, like a humble servant, completely out of place in the entire picture. But it was clearly visible that his shoulder was wrapped in bandages. Chloe's body stiffened as memories suddenly flooded back like a tidal wave. That summer, she had sneaked off to play in the back mountain and accidentally tumbled down the slope, getting bruised all over. Chapter 12. As her consciousness grew faint, a boy lifted her onto the back seat of his bicycle and pedaled furiously all the way. The mountain road was extremely rugged. Unable to bear the pain from her wounds, she instinctively opened her mouth and clamped down hard on the boy's shoulder. The boy's flesh split open, blood flowing freely. Yet he didn't utter a sound, instead gently comforting her. "Don't be afraid, the hospital is just ahead." When she awoke, the face that greeted her belonged to Julian Carter. The nurse said she was incredibly lucky. Thankfully, some boy had pedaled a bicycle dozens of kilometers over mountain roads, risking his life to get her to the hospital before collapsing exhausted in the hallway, unable to move. Chloe lay on the hospital bed, asking Julian if he was the one who saved her. For a moment, Julian was taken aback, but he didn't deny it. Chloe's entire body stiffened, her breath catching in her throat. At this very moment, what else could she not understand? She had always believed that her savior was Julian Carter. "That's why I had such peculiar feelings towards him, why his death haunted me so. Only today did I realize how utterly wrong I had been." Chapter 13.5. Chloe stood devastated, the photo album slipping from her hands to the floor. She collapsed onto the ground, murmuring to herself, "Wrong, all wrong." She remembered Noah standing silently in the corner of the photograph, recalled the scars on his shoulders, and thought of that rust-covered bicycle. So it was him, the one who had risked his life to save her. As night fell, the Miller household blazed with lights. Relatives arrived one after another, their faces brimming with smiles, their mouths full of flattery for Julian Carter. Julian was basking in his glory, carrying himself like the master of the house as he accepted everyone's congratulations. Chloe, who was being held by him, wore a slightly stiff smile. After everyone took their seats, one chair remained empty, Noah's seat, unchanged for years. Julian caught sight of it, and his expression darkened instantly. He released Chloe and strode over to that empty chair. With a forceful push, the chair crashed to the ground with a loud clatter. Turning his head, he snapped sharply at the old butler. "What's going on? Having a stranger's chair at an occasion like this, have you gone senile?" The old butler bowed his head and repeatedly apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Julian, it was my oversight. I'll remove it right away." The dining room fell silent as relatives exchanged uneasy glances. Some lowered their heads to sip tea, others pretended to adjust their napkins. No one dared to interject. Mr. Miller frowned deeply, while Mrs. Miller seemed on the verge of speaking but ultimately held her tongue. Chapter 14. Just as the old butler was about to remove the chair, Chloe suddenly stood up. "It's just one extra chair, what's all the fuss about?" "Stay," she said in a soft voice that brooked no argument. Julian whipped his head around, staring at her in disbelief. "Chloe, what do you mean?" Without looking at him, Chloe said calmly to the old butler, "Set it back properly. We can't have people thinking the Millers lack even this basic courtesy." The old butler hesitated for a moment, then respectfully straightened the chair and returned it to its original position. Julian's face turned pale and then red, his fists clenched tightly. But in the end, he suppressed his anger and forced out a fake smile. "Chloe is right, I was indeed too sensitive." With that, he returned to his seat, but his eyes were sinister and chilling. The relatives exchanged glances, and the atmosphere turned extremely awkward. Mr. Miller cleared his throat lightly and raised his glass. "This is a family dinner, no need to be too formal. Now, let's all have a drink first." The others quickly responded, the clinking of glasses temporarily masking the solemn mood in the air. After dinner began, Julian picked up a piece of fish and placed it in Chloe's bowl, speaking gently, "Chloe, I remember you love fish the most. Go ahead and try it." Chloe stared at the fish in her bowl, suddenly remembering how Noah would always meticulously remove all the bones before serving it to her. Yet the Julian before her didn't even know about her fear of fish bones. Chapter 15. The dining table was packed with people, the scene visibly lively. But without Noah present, Chloe felt an unprecedented loneliness. She picked at her food absently for a few bites before standing up, announcing, "Please take your time, I'm going upstairs first." Julian looked concerned. "Chloe, what's wrong?" Chloe casually replied, "Just not feeling well." Without another word to him, she left. As she passed Noah's room upstairs, some inexplicable pull drew her inside as if bewitched. When she turned on the light, she was shocked to find the room completely empty. Everything that belonged to Noah was gone, as if he had never lived here at all. Chloe trembled violently, her anger instantly boiling over. She dashed back to the first floor and confronted everyone in the room. Who touched Noah's room? The guests' laughter and chatter ceased abruptly. Chloe's fingers gripped the stair railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. The old butler glanced at Julian's expression before cautiously admitting, "Young mistress, Mr. Julian gave the order at noon." Julian set down his chopsticks, still wearing that careless smile. "Chloe, why get angry over such a trivial matter? Noah himself said he'd leave with nothing. Since he won't need these junk items, I had them all packed and sent to the waste disposal plant." "The waste disposal plant?" Chloe's voice suddenly rose sharply, her eyes turning red. Julian finally sensed something was off about the atmosphere but shrugged indifferently nonetheless. "They're just old clothes and books anyway. Since he doesn't want them anymore, Why keep them around taking up space? Chloe's chest heaved violently as darkness crept into her vision. Among those junk treasures were Noah's cherished photo albums, handmade birthday gifts he had crafted for her, seashells and leaves they had collected together in their childhood. 20 years of memories, just like that. Julian tossed them into the trash heap without a second thought. How dare you, she nearly shouted. That's his room, his belongings. What gives you the right to dispose of them without permission? The dining room fell silent as everyone was stunned by Chloe's sudden outburst. Chapter 16, 6. Julian's smile froze on his face. Chloe, today marks my becoming a son-in-law of the Miller family. Isn't it inappropriate for you to make such a scene over an outsider? An outsider? Chloe let out a cold laugh. Noah has lived with the Millers for 20 years. Who dares call him an outsider? The words struck Julian like a slap across the face, stripping away his smug satisfaction and leaving him utterly humiliated. Boiling with rage, he said coldly, Chloe, have you forgotten? Who chose me over him? Who demanded he leave with nothing? What are you playing at now? Mr. and Mrs. Miller hurriedly stood up to mediate, but Chloe was already beyond listening. Julian's words stabbed into her heart like a knife. Yes, it was she who had driven Noah away with her own hands. She who had tacitly permitted those humiliations. Because of her, Noah had walked out of the Miller family home wearing only underwear, besieged by dozens of reporters, becoming a laughingstock across the internet. Where are those things now? She asked the old butler, her voice trembling. The old butler stammered in reply, It should still be at the South City waste processing plant. It was only sent there this afternoon. Without another word, Chloe turned and bolted for the door. Julian grabbed her wrist with such force it made her wince in pain. Have you lost your mind, Chloe? You'd abandon me, abandon all our guests, for that pile of Noah's junk? Chapter 17. Chloe forcefully shook off his hand, her eyes burning with unprecedented fury. Let me go. Those aren't just junk. They're. Her voice suddenly choked up, unable to continue. Julian's expression turned ferocious. Chloe Miller, if you walk out that door today, don't blame me for. What will you do? Chloe coldly interrupted him. Treat me like you did Noah? Make me leave with nothing too? Julian choked, his face alternating between green and pale, instantly breaking out in a cold sweat. He was merely an adopted candidate. How could he possibly have the right to make the Miller family's eldest daughter leave with nothing? Quickly forcing out a gentle smile, he said, I'm sorry, Chloe, I was wrong. I shouldn't have dealt with Noah's belongings without permission, let alone yelled at you. It's raining heavily outside right now. How about we go look for it together tomorrow when the weather clears up? Seizing the opportunity, Chloe broke free from his grasp and dashed into the rain without looking back. The rain quickly soaked through her dress and hair, but she paid no attention to these discomforts. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest as a voice kept sighing relentlessly in her mind. It's too late, everything is too late. She reached for her phone to call Noah, but her hand froze mid-air, because she suddenly remembered, when Noah left the Miller residence yesterday, he'd left his phone behind too. Her mind replayed Noah's calm eyes as he departed, and the resolute way he'd removed each piece of clothing. Chapter 18, Noah. Rainwater blended with tears as they streamed down her face. I'm sorry, Nanchang Waste Treatment Plant. The workers were about to close the gate when they suddenly saw a drenched young woman stumble in. Where are the things delivered from the Miller's house this afternoon? Chloe gasped for breath as rainwater dripped from her hair. The workers exchanged glances, then pointed at a few large cardboard boxes sitting damp in the corner. Chloe rushed over, fumbling to open the boxes. Inside, Noah's clothes, books, and photo albums were all soaked through with rainwater. Ink had bled across pages, photographs had fused together. Her hands trembled as she picked up a sodden notebook, carefully peeling its dripping pages apart. Noah's neat handwriting had faded but was still legible. Chloe cried again today because Julian accidentally forgot her birthday. I made her favorite cake, but she didn't take a single bite. Chloe has a fever of 39 degrees. I stayed up all night with her, and by dawn her temperature finally returned to normal. Julian didn't come until noon, but even though he only brought a bouquet of flowers, Chloe smiled so happily. Chapter 19, page 7. Every page was a record about her, every line soaked with Noah's silent love. Chloe's vision blurred as she clutched the diary tightly, as if she could still salvage something this way. A worker cautiously reminded her, Miss, we'll be closing soon. Chloe seemed not to hear him, continuing to rummage through the box. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something hard. It was a handmade music box. Though soaked by the rain, the exquisite craftsmanship was still evident. She remembered this music box. That year when she was 16, she had casually mentioned wanting a snowglobe music box, the kind you couldn't just buy in stores. A month later, at her birthday celebration, Noah gave it to her. Inside, a tiny dancer twirled amidst falling snowflakes. Back then, she had only glanced at it, completely oblivious to the dense cluster of cuts covering his hands. Just leave it there, he said casually, then happily turned around to unwrap Julian's gift. Chloe clutched the music box tightly, suddenly letting out a heart-wrenching cry. The rain washed over her face, but couldn't cleanse the bone-deep remorse. She picked up her phone and called Mr. Miller. Her voice choked with tears. "Dad, help me bring Noah back, please." The day after meeting old Mr. Sterling, I accompanied them to New York. Chapter 20. Before the towering skyscraper, old Mr. Sterling wore a kindly smile. "Noah, starting today, you are the chief consultant of Sterling Group. To facilitate your work and prevent any dissent, I've assigned Sophia as your assistant. Feel free to make any requests through her. I believe in your talent, so don't hold back, give it your all. Don't worry about the Miller family, I'll handle everything." I glanced back at Sophia Sterling and nodded silently. Time flies like a shuttle. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. At Sterling Group's overseas listing celebration banquet, dazzling crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand ballroom as brightly as daylight. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling window, I gazed down at the magnificent New York nightscape, the champagne glass in my hand swaying slightly. "What's on your mind, Noah?" Sophia's voice came from behind me, soft as the wind. She was wearing a flowing silver gown today, her hair pinned up to reveal the slender curve of her pale neck. "Beautiful as a swan." "Nothing, just feels a bit surreal." I turned to clink glasses with her. "Never imagined Sterling Group could come this far in just 3 years." She chuckled, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "That's because you're here, Advisor Evans." I shook my head. "It's mainly due to the Sterling family's foundation and your courage. I'm just adding the finishing touch. You're always so modest." She suddenly took a step closer and looked up to meet my eyes. "But I don't want to hear such polite talk today." My heart skipped a momentary beat. Her gaze was too intense for me to evade. "Noah," she softly called my name, her tone resolute. "Overseas listing is just the beginning. The road ahead. I want to walk it with you, not as business partners, but as..." "Sophia," I interrupted her, my voice tinged with bitterness. "You know my past." "I do," she nodded without hesitation. "So what? You deserve to be treated with sincerity, and me, I am willing to be that person. Others may not cherish you, but I absolutely will." Chapter 21:8. The clamor of the banquet hall seemed to fade away at this moment, leaving only the sound of her breathing lingering in my ears. After a long silence, I finally sighed. "I'm not sure if I can believe in love anymore." "Then try to believe in me." She reached out, gently holding my hand, just this once. Her palm was warm and soft, like a beam of light dispelling the last shadows in my heart. I gazed at her and finally nodded. "All right." Her eyes instantly lit up, her smile blooming like a flower. The next second, she stood on tiptoe and planted a light kiss on my cheek. A chorus of good-natured laughter rose around us. My ears burned slightly, but I didn't pull away. After returning to New York, Sophia and I gradually made our relationship public. Old Mr. Sterling was pleased with the development and began deliberately, yet subtly, entrusting more of the family affairs into my hands. Under my strategic planning, the Sterling Group's territory continues to expand, and Sophia remains steadfast by my side, advancing shoulder to shoulder with me. On Thanksgiving Day, the Sterling Group announced our engagement, instantly topping the trending charts. "The Millers cast off marrying the Sterling Group's heiress? What do you mean castaway? He's now the de facto ruler of Sterling Group." So inspiring. Back when he left with nothing, all he had was a pair of shorts. I wonder if the Millers are kicking themselves after seeing this. Chapter 22. Of course they regret it. The Millers today are nowhere near what they used to be. Serves them right. Who told them to throw diamonds away as if they were stones? On my way home the next evening, while waiting at a traffic light, a woman suddenly blocked the path of my Maybach. My bodyguard was about to shoo her away, but I stopped him calmly. I asked, "Miss Miller, may I help you with something?" The woman was none other than Chloe Miller. Years had passed since we last met. She had grown much thinner and looked considerably more haggard. She remained silent for a few seconds, her voice choked with emotion. I want to have a proper talk with you, okay? "It's unnecessary," I replied flatly. "I've long since let go of the past." "But I haven't." Her voice suddenly rose sharply. "Noah, I know I was wrong. I truly know now. I've spent these 3 years searching for you, but the Sterling family blocked all information. Not until yesterday did I learn you're in New York. And what's more, Julian Carter isn't anything like I imagined. He deceived me, and he fooled the Millers too. The South City project is ruined because of him. The company's in complete chaos now, and Dad got so angry he was hospitalized." I closed my eyes, feeling a ripple of emotion inside, but soon it settled back into calm. "None of this concerns me anymore. Please," she burst into tears. "Give me a chance to make it right. Just this once, Chloe." I cut her off. "Actually, in our previous life, we were already even." Chloe's pupils dilated sharply. "So you also." Chapter 23:9. At that moment, the traffic light turned green. I rolled up the window, completely separating us into two worlds. "Drive." The car started moving. Chloe still tried to chase after it, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't catch up. Back home, Sophia noticed something off about my expression and gently wrapped her arms around my waist. "What's wrong?" I held her hand and smiled faintly. "Nothing, just ran into someone trivial earlier." She seemed to sense something but didn't press further, simply saying softly, "What would you like for dinner? I'll cook it myself." All these years, she's been personally taking care of all my daily needs. Just like in my past life when I took care of Chloe, I turned and embraced her in my arms, kissing her forehead gently. Anything you do is perfect. A month later, news broke that the Miller Group was on the brink of bankruptcy due to a broken capital chain. Julian Carter was caught after absconding with a huge sum of money, facing at least a life sentence. To all of this, I merely smiled dismissively. On the day Sophia and I got married, the whole city was buzzing with excitement. I held Sophia's hand as we walked step by step toward the high platform. Her wedding dress swayed gently in the breeze, breathtakingly beautiful. Just as we were exchanging rings, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure out of the corner of my eye. She stood far outside the venue, dressed in a plain long dress, her expression desolate. Sophia seemed to sense something. She tilted her head slightly, following my gaze, then curled her lips into a knowing smile. Chapter 24. She asked softly, "Noah, do you regret withdrawing from the Miller's son-in-law selection back then?" Instead of answering, I lowered my head and captured her lips with mine. The kiss was tender yet resolute, as if declaring my choice to the entire world. The audience erupted into enthusiastic applause, accompanied by countless blessings. When I looked up again, that familiar figure had already turned to leave. The solitary silhouette appeared frail and lonely, gradually fading into the crowd. The wedding ceremony continued with great festivity, yet a trace of complex emotions surfaced in my heart. Chloe's appearance was like a silent farewell, a final glance back at a previous life. But I never regretted my choice. Sophia grasped my hand tightly, her fingertips warm and firm. I looked at her. Her gaze was clear and resolute. Taking a deep breath, I cast aside all distracting thoughts and gave her a relieved smile. The road ahead is still long. Let's walk it together, all right? Sophia's eyes shimmered with tears. She nodded gently. All right, the end.